You're listening to Rappahannock Radio. This program was made possible by a grant from RAC's Claudia Mitchell Arts Fund.
I am born.
All right, let's get comfortable. Do we have enough wine?
I need to get myself a new fresh glass of wine. Those are such good chips, son. But I don't think I could eat none of them because I'm on an interview. Thank you. Ooh. This is so fun. Wait, I'm gonna hear myself talking?
You're gonna hear yourself talking.
Oh, you're in my ears. That's crazy.
Victor.
Victor. My name is Victor.
Rogers-Phillips. Rogers hyphen.
That's
Phillips.
correct.
Born
1829. Yeah.
No, seriously.
Are we recording?
We've been recording.
Okay, yeah. So.
Let's get down to business. Tell me about Victor. Who is this eternal, ethereal soul?
Well, yeah, my name is Victor Rogers-Phillips. And in this life, that's who I am.
That's who you be.
That's who I be. Yeah, you know, I was not born in this county.
Where were you born? You were born in Fauquier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was born on my family's farm in Fauquier, in a 200-year-old summer kitchen.
So you have deep Virginia roots.
Pretty deep, yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, because it's an old farm that you were born on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a horse farm, right?
Yeah, it's a horse farm, or it was. Yeah, my great-grandfather retired from the military in 46 or 45 and got this farm to raise racehorses.
Does it have a name?
It's called Lone Star.
Lone Star Farm?
Mm-hmm.
Some of you may be familiar with it. Is it still called that?
Well, we sold it, so
yeah.
It's not called anything, but...
it's called Gone.
It's on the edge of being developed.
Oh, wow. That must be crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's weird to have, the place where you were, born and grew up turn into a housing development.
I think a lot of people are probably feeling that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which interesting segue just to think about, so that's on the scale of just us here in the United States feeling that, encroaching pressure of development. But, I mean, you've spent a lot of time in the Amazon and different places around the world that have been dealing with that for a long time.
Absolutely. Globalization is real, and it has effects that are resounding. Things that we take for granted in this country, like our Instagrams and TV
mm-hmm.
and fast food. Once a road goes into the jungle, then all of those things come along with the road. And people, they may still function in their normal ways in the forest with nature, but then the cell phones, all of the
right.
attraction to all of this stuff.
A connection that brings a disconnect.
Yeah.
So your work right now, you're an ethnobotanist.
Right. Anthropologist, ethnobotanist, ethnographer. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that. Where have you studied? Hello, little guy. We have an audience. He's like, I'd like to hear.
Baby Casimir. Yeah, so I did my undergrad in anthropology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, which is on Oahu. And originally I was aiming for ethnobotany there. I chose that school because it's one of the few ethnobotany programs in the United States at undergrad level. And then once I got there, I realized, well, it's going to take a little longer than I want, and it's pretty expensive. So
Yeah.
I talked to my advisor and I asked what my options were. And they said, well, yeah, you could change your major to anthropology.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on go into ethnobotany, either via botany or anthropology. And I already have a lot of experience in plants. Plants
Yeah.
are my forte since I was like a little kid. So I figured, yeah, well, I've always loved anthropology.
Yeah.
I've been obsessed with native cultures and especially plant medicine. That's ethnobotany. Like, wow, So I took my first anthropology class and it was awesome. So I was like, well, shoot.
What was it? Just like an intro class or what? Yeah.
Intro to anthropology. And it was really cool because the professor, he teaches his work is in Cambodia.
Okay.
Which is like really cool. And he's a laid back guy. He went to the University of Virginia.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he
that's
went
where
to
I went.
I know. And that's where I partied a lot. and then he went to Yale and then he's a professor.
Okay.
My professor. So that was really intriguing. So I changed my major and went ahead with anthropology, but took a lot of botany courses and I worked in the botany department.
So what was your goal, your overall goal for doing something like that? Or were you just sort of like, these are my interests, these are my passions, try and, weave these things together?
Yeah. Basically, this is like what I'm interested in. I'm just going to pursue what I'm interested in. Not exactly sure where I want to go.
Mm-hmm. Everywhere?
Basically everywhere. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm already in Hawaii. It's one place I've always wanted to go my whole life.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to go to the Amazon.
Yeah. So you've been to the Amazon?
Yeah.
How many times now?
Just once, actually.
Just once?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go?
I went into the far east of Ecuador.
Okay.
Near the border of Peru and Colombia.
And how did you find yourself there?
It was in 2019. I was with my boyfriend in Quito. And there's a tribe that lives down the, Agua Dulce.
The sweet water?
Yeah, or Agua Rico River, which runs into the Amazon.
Okay.
And the co-fan in my environmental anthropology class, we read a book about the co-fan, and it's called A Future for Amazonia. And it was really interesting. And we Skyped with the professor who wrote it, and he said, oh yeah, if any of you guys want to go down to hang out with the co-fan.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, please. But I emailed him for 3 years, off and on, and
didn't get anything.
So finally, I emailed the head guy. His name is Randy Borman, and he is they call him the Gringo Chief of the co-fan. Because he's the son of missionaries, and but he's helped the co-fan reclaim their lands and stand up to oil companies.
Excellent.
And he married a native co-fan. So I got in touch with him, and he gave this very cryptic email. He said, there might be a boat coming on this date. You have to take the bus to this place and find this place, and then. So we did. I was like, well, let's do it. So we went from Quito down through the Andes, down the Oriente, which is the east side, and then entered the jungle. And on the way, it was really amazing. We're on this bus ride that's like 6 hours long. There's a volcano in the distance, and I just look up and it's just spewing smoke. Really amazing. And we stopped in one town, stayed the night there. I got really sick.
Oh no.
Amazing. And then the next day, another bus ride to a town, and then confusion, and then an hour.
Confusion.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Just like, what are we doing? How are we gonna like confusion with like from a travel aspect, or just like this sort of we're going into the jungle?
Yeah, it was like
ready?
confusion with like travel, like thinking we're getting on this one bus, but then I noticed the bus is going north. Like I have a sort of really good internal compass, and I'm like, this is not going where we need to go. And then it's like, yeah, it's going to Colombia. And
so at that point, are you guys are speaking Spanish, or I mean, and you know, you can speak Spanish and not speak the local dialect at the same time. It makes it very confusing.
Right.
So were you able to like pretty much understand and like you guys?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. My boyfriend Josh is fluent.
Okay,
so,
excellent.
Yeah, that was really good.
So you guys figured out the bus scenario.
Yeah, and then we had to catch a car. So we took a car an hour south to the banks of the river. And then we got dropped off in this like town where there's a ferry that crosses just back and forth. And we stayed there. We got there at 11 in the morning and stayed there until 6, like asking people if they were going down river. Some people were like, oh yeah, we can take you there for $300. We're like, no. So we were about to like, you know, give up hope. We were posted up outside this general store. And then finally someone said, oh yeah, you should ask that guy there. And then we saw this guy and we're like, okay, cool. And it turns out that's Randy Borman's son. So he's like, oh, my dad didn't tell me you're coming. We're like, oh, okay. And he's like, come on. So we get in his canoe. It's like a really long canoe with an engine. He's with 2 other guys. And it's really long, packed with stuff. Like a barrel of fuel, all this like supplies. And we leave around 6:30 and we go down the river. It's a really nice wide river. And the sun starts to go down. And as the sun goes down, it's just like the night sky is unbelievable. Just
so clear.
Unbelievable stars, yeah. And the Milky Way just blinding bright. And shooting stars everywhere. And it was a 4.5 hour boat ride.
Wow.
You know, going fast through the Amazon, and it's like the wind, it was cold, and we're just like sort of huddled there. And it was really amazing. And actually something interesting, there was this chain of lights that we saw moving across the sky. And I saw it, and then there was one at the end that was just this, like, sort of faintly blinking. And we saw it, and then our guy Randy's son stopped the boat and stopped the engine and was like, you guys see that? And we're like, yeah, what is that? And it was like a spaceship cruising across the sky. It was totally crazy. And then we started back up, and then we got to the village in the night around 10:30.
And what do you do when you get to a village at night in the jungle?
I know, right? He leads us to a platform, and he says, you can set your tent up here, and then tomorrow we'll have a cabana for you.
Okay, what's a cabana?
A cabana is like a little cabin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, we went, set up our tent, and then we woke up, and we woke up in the middle of this sort of forested village. It kind of modern. I think most people have tin roofs now, and some like brick building or like cinder block. Cement.
About how many people in this village?
The village is probably about 20 people, but that's the center of the village, and then further out across the river and further into the forest are a lot more people.
Okay, so it's like a village within a community of other villages. So it's not just this isolated village out in the middle of the jungle.
Right. No, it is pretty isolated though. It's way out there. It's called Zabalo. And it's way down. But it was really amazing.
And then what did you guys proceed to do?
We just hung out. We were just doing some ethnography.
So you were taking notes? You're taking field notes? I know we have some recordings, but...
Yeah, we were taking a few field notes. I always take field notes whenever I'm traveling. Always record the day and everything that happened. And we had brought some tuna and rice, because that's what Randy Borman told us to do. And we arranged to have a woman cook the food for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so she just cooked our meals for us. There was $3 per meal. So that was cool. And then we just walked around, hung out, went into the cacao groves, where the coffee was growing. It's like all around the villages, they have their what they call terrenos, which are garden beds basically, and like garden fields. And then the forest starts. And it was a celebration for Mother's Day at that time. So we drank a bunch of chicha, which is like manioc beer.
Uh-huh.
Which traditionally they're supposed to like chew it, and then the enzymes make it ferment. Yeah, I don't know if they chewed it, but it was pretty strong, and so it was really super fun. And then that night we went to sleep, and then there was this earthquake.
Oh my gosh!
In the night, and I was like, "What is going on?" Like I woke up and I thought, "Is this like a herd of elephants or something?" But I'm like, I'm not in Africa and I'm not in Asia. Yeah, and it was just really interesting, a rumble. And it had come up from...
Rumble in the jungle.
Yeah, it was just so crazy. And it came from Peru.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was cool. We hung out there for a few days. And then we went into the forest, taking a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, whoa.
Like just by yourselves?
No, we went with this guy named, I can't remember, Stalin. And he led us, and it was to this river way back, and he was just looking for some fish.
Were there like paths, or you like hacking through?
There was
like,
a path.
Machete?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
what?
he always has the machete, and the dogs always, there were 2 dogs that went with him. So there's a path that they usually go when they're hunting, like peccary.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you try any peccary?
I tried it in a different place. Yeah, but this time, no.
No. Is it like, is it like pork?
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of pork-like. Yeah.
They're cute.
Yeah, it's yummy.
They're dangerous. I think they're really cute.
Yeah, they have big teeth. Yeah, and yeah. So it was really neat. And on our way out of the jungle, coming back to the village, we were behind Stalin. Stalin's in the front, and then the dogs are sort of walking up with him, and we hear this like Josh and I. We hear this like growl, like a it's a cat.
Uh-oh, jungle cat.
Yeah, and it's like we were crossing this fallen tree. So the tree had probably fallen maybe 2 weeks before or something, a giant tree. So we were crossing through the branches. So there were all these sort of wilted branches, and we heard what was probably a jaguar.
Wow. Were you guys like...
Yeah, we were like...
shaking in your boots?
Oh, shit. Yeah, so we were...
Where were the dogs at?
They were ahead, so I was like, dang.
Did you guys have, like, walking sticks or machetes or anything?
No. So we just kept moving. We asked Stalin, and he was like, oh, I didn't hear it. So we just moved on, I was like, oh, shoot. But the jaguar presence definitely there. And it was like, oh, yeah, well, blessings to the jaguar people, because we're in their territory.
Yeah, and it's definitely a sacred animal.
Yeah.
In the Amazon.
Yeah. All up and down. Yeah. So it was really neat there.
Did you have, when you traveled, do you have culture shock? Do you ever experience that?
Not really as an adult. when I was younger, sort of, but I got over that pretty quickly.
Like, what do you mean?
Like when I was younger, when I was 18,
Mm-hmm.
I went to do a sort of short internship,
Mm-hmm.
a horticultural internship with a garden designer. And it's England, so it's like, it's the Western,
Right.
world. But he burned his trash and cooked in aluminum pots. And it's just sort of things that I'm like, oh my, no, we can't. Like,
You're like, tea time? What's this?
yeah, it was just so scary. But beyond that, no, I mean, I'm usually I'm fine. I've been in parts of Asia and I'm just like, okay, it's cool. Let's just hang out.
What is the closest experience you've had to being like in culture shock as an adult? Like any just like where you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is even happening. Or was that happening with the Jaguar scenario?
Jaguar is cool. No, I don't know, maybe one time I was entering Bolivia from Argentina, and I went and I noticed that they didn't stamp my passport. Interesting. So I'm like, well, I guess it's fine. Not fine. I went up to Lake Titicaca and hung out and met these like all kinds of cool people and went swimming in Lake Titicaca. I threw my signet ring in Lake Titicaca. Remember I used to wear that like pinky ring? Yeah, I was like, offering.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I met these Irish girls, and then we had dinner with them at this candlelit restaurant that was so amazing, where we ate trout. And they were like, oh yeah, we didn't get our passports stamped. I'm like, me neither. And they're like, yo,
this is wrong.
You gotta get to immigration as soon as possible.
Get the hell out of this restaurant. Get to immigration.
So I had to go back. When I got back to La Paz, I had to spend like an entire day getting printouts of everything. All like
that was more like societal shock, though, right? The paperwork to prove that you have the paperwork that you're here and you were actually here and you were documented.
Yeah,
you were here.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really annoying. But I guess that's not really culture shock. I can't really think of a.
What about when you came back? I feel like I've experienced that and talked about that with people before, which is that I didn't feel it so much when I was there. Now, given I haven't been to as many places as you have, and definitely I've been to places that had more of a Western, societal, like, I mean, Buenos Aires, for example, like that's I mean, Europe. Yeah, right. It basically is. They speak Spanish with an Italian accent, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of Italians and Germans down there.
Yeah.
But I think maybe when I came back from different places from traveling, just soaking in life and the difference about being here in Virginia versus, where you were in the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So
definitely more on the return side.
Yeah, there's that shock. I get that a lot, especially if I've been gone for, 3 or more months.
Yeah. And
then coming back, I'm like, oh, man.
So what's the longest trip you've ever taken?
I guess it would be...
To a country.
Well, I guess, I don't know. I usually do about, it's 3 months, because usually I can stay in a country for 3 months. So in Ecuador, I stayed for exactly 90 days in 2019.
And you guys, something happened in Ecuador, right? Did you guys get robbed?
Yeah.
How was that? Was that a culture shock or just a life shock?
Well, it was just kind of like, well, I'm not surprised.
But they were relatively nice, right? I mean, other than were you held at gunpoint?
I was, yeah. But wait, let me just step it back a little bit. So like, my research is done. I do my research in Ecuador on the coast.
Okay.
In this small village, about 10 miles in from the coast in the cloud forest. And it's called Rio Blanco. And I got there by doing a field school in 2018. And the field school is cool because it does total anthropology, but it does either archaeology or ethnography. And ethnography field schools are kind of rare. So I found it and I said, gosh, I better go to this. So I did 6 weeks down there.
Why are they so rare?
Because ethnography isn't really something that people are doing anymore.
Why do you? I mean, it's been a while since I've been in the anthropological field. So
Yeah.
why is that?
I think because I'm not sure exactly. I mean, archaeology is something you can do. Public archaeology, you can like when they're developing something or widening a road,
You'd be like, wait, I need to go in here and make sure that there's this is clear.
Ethnographers, they go and live with a culture and learn about a culture, and it actually stems from like colonialism,
right?
Like we need people to go in there and learn about how they live.
So is it a push away from colonialism?
Well, now because it's totally separate from the colonialism,
but it has those roots.
Mm-hmm. I mean, anthropology does, yeah. So I don't really know exactly why there isn't so much ethnography, but I like it.
Yeah,
it's interesting to me, and that's what I've always wanted to do.
Yeah. So you did this field school in the cloud forest, and what is your thesis?
Right. So I did the field school, and I was working on ethnobotany. I said I wanted to do ethnobotany.
Okay, so you went back to that.
Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, well, if you want to, after I did the 6 weeks and wrote a paper, they said, well, if you want to do a master's program, you should apply. And that's also where I met my boyfriend Josh, who's born in Virginia. Amazing. But so then I applied, and then my work was totally focused in the cloud forest.
And so for our listeners out there, what is ethnobotany? What does that entail?
Yeah, ethnobotany is exactly the hybrid between anthropology and botany. And it's really how people use plants in any way.
Okay.
For medicine, for shelter, for clothing, for food, for drugs, getting close to the gods.
Right.
And so ethnobotanists go in and try to figure out exactly how a culture uses their environment, particularly the plants. Mm-hmm. And that's the most fascinating to me, because it's an interface between man and nature. And it's where, I've been a gardener my whole life, and that's where it's the same thing. Gardening it's a hybrid between man and nature.
Right, it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, the garden can't exist unless man is there.
Yeah, the plants are like, woman. Yes.
Yeah.
Cultivate us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make our jobs easier.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of plants are you studying?
I study all the plants that they're growing. Mostly it's food plants.
Okay, so horticulture.
It's horticulture in the cloud forest.
Okay.
Yeah. They're the community where I work, they have been, contacted. They're on the coast of Ecuador, so contact goes back to the 1530s.
Yeah.
So it's not like they've been uncontacted for a long time. So they've lost their native language a long time ago. The native language still lives in some names of towns. There's a place called Salango, and that's where the field school is centered. It's right on the beach there. And it's an ancient place, 6,000-year history. And another place called Ayampe, and that's a surf town. But those names still are of the native origin. Mm-hmm. But the people, they are considered mestizos. So they're sort of mix of, it's Spanish. They're indigenous people, but they speak Spanish. They're Catholics, more or less. But the way of life is not really changed in the forest. And what they do is they practice subsistence horticulture. So their main crops are like yucca, which is manioc, plantain, and they grow some coffee. Mm-hmm. And also they collect from wild palm trees, the tagua nut.
Okay.
Which is called the ivory of the vegetable world.
Why is it called that?
Because it's a really hard nut, and it's when you cut it, it looks like ivory.
And can you do carvings and stuff with it?
Yeah,
okay.
So you can buy them at like this sort of fair trade stores.
Okay.
Very often you'll see them, and it looks like ivory totally, but it's tagua nut. And the tagua palm it grows throughout the forest. It grows only in very moist forests in Northwest South America. And where I work, that's one of the main things. People go into the forest all day long, to collect tagua.
Yeah.
And it's only the tagua that's growing on the ground or fallen on the ground that's ripe. And it takes 4 to 7 years for the tagua nut to ripen.
Oh, wow.
And when the tagua nut is young, it's like a young coconut. So you can cut it open and drink the water. And if it's a little bit older, it's a jelly. So you can eat it. It's like a chewy, like it's awesome. And then it gets a little bit harder, and then it's more like an apple. And then it becomes just solid, really hard.
So do your field studies, I guess, can you call them your field studies, your ethnography? So when you go into a village like this, where do you start? Like, do you just start hanging out with people, kind of like what you're talking about? When you arrived at the village in the middle of the night, you wake up in the morning, you're just trying to see, what's up with these people? What are they doing? What's their daily life like? Let me just observe, right?
Yeah.
But then, of course, as soon as you're like observing something, then it sort of like changes the outcome a little bit. Or did you not feel that?
Well, with me, what I always do, and because I came into this master's program having experienced a lot of travel, and especially all around the world in cultures that I do not belong to and I've never experienced before. So, and then I find the best way is just to go with the flow, be friendly, and just sort of make friends. So, in Rio Blanco, during the field school, I had the introduction from my professor.
Right.
But then when I started doing my master's thesis work, then, I still had that introduction, like they knew where I was coming from, but I had to build the rapport on my own. And they sort of remembered me because I like to hang out. And so, yeah, it's just I live in people's like family houses and eat with them, work with them.
So most of your study comes from just actually living like there, like you're living as one of them.
Exactly.
It's not so much like, I'm going to interview you now. You're not doing this to them.
Yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of, anthropologists, ethnographers, they'll do that. They'll have structured interviews and they'll do conduct censuses. Sensi?
No,
Sensi. Yeah.
Why did you make the decision not to do that? To go an alternative route?
Well, it's just the way I am. You know, I prefer to learn about people just by getting to know them and learn about their work through experience. So I do, practice participant observation and participant experience. So I work with them, and that's the best way to learn. I'm like, with the machete out in the forest for all the morning, working, and that's the best way to learn because you understand how much energy it takes, how hard the work is, how often you
done
sharpen.
it before. You grew up. We can go back a little bit and talk about your roots here in Virginia with, the study of plants and your love affair with plants. That probably helps you to feel comfortable as well, right? You kind of go in and you're like, hey, I know plants. And and I know people, but I know the plants too. And I know
and I know the earth. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's one of the huge advantages I've had is, both my parents were gardeners. Growing up, I was born in Fauquier at Lone Star Farm, but I spent some formative years, 2 or 3 years out here near Flint Hill, at a place called Jordan River Farm. And that's where it was biodynamic farm, pick your own strawberries,
right?
Everything. And that's where I really sort of imprinted on the garden, learned all the plants, from the age of 3, especially the medicinal plants.
Why were you so, lots of kids grow up with their parents being gardeners and are
I know.
So why did you have that interest, or do you remember how you got that way?
I think I was just before being born, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I need to be doing. So I'm just going to come into this.
You're like, I got this set up already.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure. It's just I was just taken with it. So, coming from that and then moving back to my grandparents' farm in Lone Star from Rappahannock and working the garden there. My grandparents are also gardeners. So we always grew our own food. I built a beautiful garden there with a lot of flowers and always planting trees and stuff. So when you go around the world and you have skills like that, like something so basic as just like working with the earth, it enables you to see and interact in a different way than like a regular tourist would.
Right.
Because regular tourist is like, oh yeah, like, you know, I have a whatever job you may do. And it's like, you can't, like...
How are you going to connect?
That doesn't... No one can relate to that in the countryside of, like, Cambodia, for example.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, wow, look at your mango tree. This is amazing. And like, wow, look at that rice paddy. And so, oh, where did you get that plant? Like, you pick this, you use this, how do you prepare it? And they're so, you know, they just open up because that's their life.
Right.
So everywhere I've gone, I've always been... or had the ability to easily interact with people because of plants and nature.
Do you feel like that will be a part of your, are you going to write a book about your research? I mean, you're writing a thesis, but, you know, I mean, it's interesting now, especially the 20th and now the 21st century, right?
Yeah.
Turn in anthropology is not just, hey, we're going to study the other and, you know, come in with this aspect of, you know, interviewing the other. We're going to not only go in and try and live as the people do, but we're also going to reflect on how that relates to us and our own background, like your own anthropological story, so to speak. So, I mean, do you feel like that would be an aspect of your writings, to talk about how plants have connected you to other people through your research?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I'd love to turn my research into a book. Mm-hmm. Once I'm writing my thesis now. But yeah, I'm interested in how, you know, horticulture, plants, the earth, nature, connects people and connects them to the land, to the landscape, and creating a sort of identity, personal identity, identity of the landscape. That cultural landscape is really interesting to me, and that, you know, for example, where I work, people have been working in the forest for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and certain terrenos, which are certain plots of land that their family have worked on, there's a memory that builds up there. Just like where I was born on my farm, we have these memories that are like cultural in our family. The place where the tractor, you know, almost tipped over because there's a big hole there or something, or, you know, the pond where we all went swimming in the summer, or the tree that fell on the house, you know, these certain spots, but it's these certain memories that are attached to certain places. And so cultural landscape, wherever I go, also I am try to be aware that this landscape is endowed with some cultural significance that I definitely don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's very personal, very intimate.
Yeah. And you know, we look at a mountain and people are like, oh, that's just a mountain. But to local people, it's like,
there's a legend, there's a story.
Yeah,
their grandfather went there, and you know, like, yeah.
Or, you know, so and so met there, or it's the dwelling place of a deity.
Yeah. So
that's really interesting. And then the other thing is that's really interesting in anthropology now is something called multi-species anthropology.
Okay, tell me about that.
Multi-species ethnography. And that is focusing on things that are other than human. So animals and plants and the lives that those things have.
Okay.
And how those lives come, you know, intersect with the human lives. And I can't quite do that in my thesis because I'm just doing horticulture, but others have done multi-species ethnography on, you know, the lives of the plants that are in the rainforest, and how humans going in, it's from the perspective of the plants, where it's the world of the forest and the human is an outsider coming into the forest.
Yeah.
And it's this whole network of lives, different plants, different animals, all these different species together.
I've often thought about that, like when you're, like, for example, out by a campfire or a bonfire, and we've got this light and we're around the fire and stuff, but then like this whole other worlds within worlds live out in the darkness at night, and that, you know, what must they think of us when they're like, what are those things doing gathering around that really bright thing? I mean, I'm sure that they know and they're aware of it by now, but just the other perspective, you know, of like, why are they doing that?
Right.
And so I like that what you just said about the idea of this, you know, earth like humans are well, I mean, we are connected to it, and you see that through your work and through your travel, but at the same time we've disconnected ourselves from it.
Very much so in the modern.
Yeah. And so do you see that a lot? Like, I mean, we started this out talking about your farm and talking about globalization. So how do you see that affecting the places that you're traveling?
Well, particularly where I work in Rio Blanco on the coast of Ecuador, it's interesting because everyone has a TV.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, so it's like 20 houses there. So there are like 20 households in this village, and it's up in the mountains. And they all have flat screen TVs on their walls. And they're all watching like the news from Guayaquil. And they're watching like telenovelas.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, what? So for me, I hate TV. I like cannot stand TV, and I'm like, what is going on? So that's a little bit upsetting, but
you were expecting a pure experience here.
Yeah, and that's my like.
I know that you can unpack
naive,
that all day long.
Yeah,
yeah,
and idealistic but no, and it's like, okay, that's fine. And then actually, some of the houses are just getting Wi-Fi also, which is wild. But beyond that. They still practice their traditional way of life, which is wonderful, and I'm really glad of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it changes. And cell phones, Facebook, people love Facebook.
Yeah, people do love Facebook for some way. It's addictive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's not talk about Facebook.
So, but that's kind of unfair, though, right? I mean, I guess a lot of people would say, you know, how can you, like, I guess you'd be pigeonholing a society if you were like, oh, you're not allowed to move on, you know, like you can't, but I understand what you're saying. Like, you're hoping to see it.
It's a romantic idea.
Yeah.
And it's something that actually, unfortunately, is pretty well vanished.
Yeah.
Looking back at ethnography of the past century, people really had a good time experiencing cultures that had not experienced anything else.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, they were quote unquote unspoiled.
Right.
Yeah.
But of course, yeah. I mean, everyone. I mean, as humanity, we're all gonna.
What? The avatars on Facebook.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, we already are.
No, but I mean, but you still had these cultures that tell me again, who are the people that you are working with?
They are just local people in Ecuador, costeños.
Okay. So, but the fact that, like you said, they've been using the land in a similar way for, I mean, hundreds, thousands of years, right? I mean, that's pretty rare, too.
Yeah. And so it's interesting when whenever they work in the earth, things come up from the past. There are pottery sherds everywhere, and they're thousands of years old. Everywhere, pieces of lithics, worked stone, come up in the garden beds, and so they. I forgot what to say.
They're working in the present, but working in the past
right.
at the same time. Right? You know, they're finding their digging, sifting through the history.
Yeah, kind of. But with globalism. Oh my God. With
globalization.
Yeah, globalization. Yeah. What we see sometimes, and we're seeing more, is instead of working with the machete for weeding purposes, people, if they have enough money, they'll buy a weed whacker.
Oh, wow. So you are seeing changes like that.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I mean, you could make the argument that we have, we still have similar practices here, the way we do stuff, but no, at the same time, no, here in the U.S., I mean, we have all these tools that are, I mean, if you've done any landscaping at all or just worked in your garden, they make it incredibly, easier. Not easy. It's still hard work.
Right.
Working the land is difficult.
And what's so interesting there is, like, the machete is the main tool
Yes.
The machete is for weeding the garden, is for digging holes, is for cutting down trees. The machete is the main tool. But as people, if they are able to save some money, they will buy a weed whacker. And then one of the most scary things for me that I've seen coming lately is herbicide.
Yeah, that is very scary.
And people...
Are they aware or not aware of what it... I mean...
They're not aware of it.
I guess that's unfair to say because we are just now becoming aware of it.
Right.
I mean, some people have been calling that out. I mean, Rachel Carson for, since
of course.
50s and earlier, basically as soon as they started to become, mass produced. But
yeah. So
is there a movement there to
the thing is with them
educate on that or
not really? And they pride themselves. They use the forest as for ecotourism.
Mm-hmm.
And tourists come there to see the forest, to see the monkeys, to see the plants and the forest. But yeah, and then they often will say, "Oh, we don't use any chemicals or anything here," and usually they don't. But there are a few members of the community who have gotten these fumigators. It's like a leaf blower, and they put the herbicide in there, including glyphosate.
Oh God.
And they are spraying it, on places in the forest that they've cut down the trees where they want just grass to grow for the cows. So it's really hard because I don't feel like it's my place to be like,
right.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
I'm like, eh. So what I do is just one time they asked me to give $7 to buy some líquido, some liquid for the herbicide, and I said no, and they're like, why? And I'm like, because I don't agree with it. It's bad for nature, it's bad for the people, And then another day I was working with this guy named Gaston, and he was going into the forest to a place where I'd worked with him the year before with the machete, cutting back heliconia, cutting back all of the montes, which means weeds, and but he wanted to go up there with the
Líquido.
With the líquido, the fumigator. And I just said, no, I'll stay down here and work in the yucca with the machete, but I'm not going to go up there.
And what is the reaction? I mean, do they think you're being like a prude, or do they understand? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, they're like, he was like, oh, come on, you could just help me carry water up, And I'm like, no. So... And they respect me, in my choice, because I'm still going to be working my ass off,
right? And
actually in a hotter place than in the deep in the forest. But they don't really understand, why I'm not interested in it.
Right, because they're seeing it as a tool, just a straight up tool.
They're seeing it as like a magical tool.
Easier and yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. And one of the things that they used to really believe in is something called the hibra, and the hibra is it's a wild female spirit of the forest. And traditionally they used to go into the forest and they would ask the hibra for, what is it called?
Blessing?
Yeah, like the blessing for the hibra, or consent to come into the forest and go hunting. And they would say a prayer to the hibra or give offerings to the hibra for, a good hunt. And
I'm having flashbacks to Jira. I know that this was told to you too. My mom used to always be like, ask permission, before you take
from a plant.
A leaf of something off an aloe, or pick a flower. You need to ask permission.
Yeah, always.
And I laugh about it, but I definitely always do it.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm always like, thank you, plant. Yeah. And so that is something that people used to do. And there are certain bird calls that when you hear in the forest that would traditionally be considered the hibra.
She's
speaking.
Listening.
Yeah.
She's speaking back.
And so it's interesting because when Gaston, who I was working with, when he came out of the forest after fumigating, I was going into the forest to go on a hike up. I was going to go on a swim up in a waterfall, and past he and his mates, and they were laughing, but he actually was covered in bee stings, and his hands were super swollen up. And he was just incredibly stung up because he came upon a bee's nest. And I was like, yeah, that's the hibra being like, don't spray
don't bring
this
that poison into my house.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly. So,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know if he sees it that way, but... Yeah, so it's really weird because it's such a beautiful place, and in the forest, and often you'll be walking down a really muddy path, and then you just go down this other really small path that's almost hidden, and then you come upon this terreno, and it's just a tropical garden with huge banana leaves, and just swaying in the breeze, orange trees all over the place, and then just like all these plants that are growing, and it's just cut out of the forest, a small, maybe an acre. And they're like toucans flying around, and it's just like, what a dream.
Like
And
paradise.
paradise. And it's like, oh, you guys, like, don't you really want to spray poison all over this? Like, what?
Yeah, but again, I guess it's a vantage point.
Mhm.
Like, you know, what I was trying to get at by saying, like, the story about the golden age here in the States is like, we were thinking, look at this cool product. Like, look
Yeah.
at, there wasn't, I guess, for everybody, although some people had it, right, the foresight
Right.
of what is this going to do down the road. And I guess that's what it kind of comes down to, is like, stop tampering with shit.
Mhm.
Like, the most basic stuff,
Yeah.
is usually the best. And that's not to say you can't use, tools.
Yeah, and I think the weed whacker it's a fine thing.
Yeah.
It's just different because it changes
How you...
the whole feel,
Right. Instead of being out there, like, hearing the birds and stuff, all
And
of
the
a sudden
machete.
it's like...
Yeah. You hear the engine. It's like, oh, yeah.
Now, are they using, like... So that's basically how you're starting your garden. If you go into the rainforest, you're just going to, like, hack away with a machete. Are they burning or what?
Yeah, so if they're... Usually the terrenos are plots that have been
So they don't
farmed.
have to do
Yeah,
much to get it cleared.
But if they do clear more, then they cut all the trees down, usually with machetes,
Yeah.
which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. that's all I
And
know.
they will cut all the branches off and pile them up. And usually, if it's part of the year, is called the garua, and the garua is the mist that comes in off of the ocean, and it's like a cloud basically.
Yeah,
So in the
that's
cloud forest, it's like you're in the cloud. And during the garua, if you do any cutting of things, you have to pile them up, and then you have to wait for the sun to come. And when the sun comes out, which comes around September, October, and stays until like May, then there's still the sun and really heavy rains. During the garua, it's considered the dry season, even though it's constantly a mist cloud, but there's no heavy rain that comes.
Okay.
So it would be like a mist, and there would be a constant dripping off the roof, but it's not heavy rain. So the rivers are small, even though it seems like it should be the opposite. But then when the sun comes and the rainstorms come, there's more water, and the sun will dry up anything that they cut, and then they'll burn it then. So it's a process. But yeah, I mean, they keep their terrenos going, and then they'll interplant. So it'll be like, if they clear a terreno, the first thing they'll plant maybe is plantain, and then they'll plant yucca also. So that's the manioc. And then they'll also plant in fruit trees. So different fruit trees that are going to take some years to establish. So it's a sort of tapestry of different plants growing together. The shorter term growing ones, like a plantain and pineapple. Pineapple will take 8 to 12 months to grow a pineapple. Mm-hmm. Plantain the same. So you can get fruit from those quickly, but then the coffee, it's 3 years growing. So there's all this whole tapestry, and then eventually when it gets mature, just like any garden that you plant, when it matures, then you see, oh, okay, cool, it's like all these fruit trees. And sometimes to the untrained eye, it just looks like the regular rainforest. You wouldn't know that.
But that's how you would want it, right? I mean, you don't want a monoculture to come in and just, tear up the soil, which is like, I mean, I'm sure you must feel that when you're documenting and studying these things. It's like there's a sense of posterity that kicks in the back of your mind, right? I mean, it's like, how long has it taken for us to get away from that here to now go back to being like, oh wait, if you plant the same exact thing in the same spot, it's going to tear up that soil and rip out all the nutrients. And yet it's been, I mean, something in history and passed down through lineages of families and just people in general gardening to know that you don't do that.
Yeah. Diversity.
So it's like, it's important that that gets continued.
Yeah, it is. And especially in a place like Ecuador, which Ecuador is one of the biggest banana producers in the world. And between the Sierra, which are the Andes, and the coast, it's all plantations of banana and plantain, coffee and cacao, and just monocrop, like, you know. So they have to use all the pesticides. Some oil palm. Oil palm is coming in also, especially in the Oriente, in the Amazon.
And bananas, I mean, when I was in Costa Rica, they were like, these are some of the most poisonous stuff you can eat, and everybody always thinks, oh, banana, like their poor, beautiful, succulent skin soak up all the chemicals.
I know, it's really scary.
Yeah, no, it is scary. I have to laugh to deal with the
I know
the idea of it.
Yeah, so it's interesting to get, if you're traveling from the mountains through the central, between the mountains and the coast, and you see all these monocrop plantations, and then you get to these ancient mountains where I do my work, and these mountains are all clothed in the beautiful cloud forest, rainforest, and there the people are still practicing that traditional horticulture with diverse crops intermixing, and it's, in some ways, it's almost like it's mimicking the forest, the diversity of the forest. And they'll also cultivate hardwood trees that come up just as volunteers. Like, oh yeah, I recognize that. It's like a cedro. Okay, let's let that grow, because then if I need to have some wood in the future, or my grandson or something, I can use that.
And so do you find that most of these individuals live, that are born, live and die in these villages? Like, they don't stray very far from there?
Not really, yeah. And so most of the people who are there, they may have been to Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador, maybe once or never. The closest city is Guayaquil, which is on sort of closer to the coast. They will sometimes, the children in particular, will go to Guayaquil or some other smaller cities nearby to work for some years. And there's a lot of that out-migration. It's been progressively going, that the community is growing smaller and smaller, because the life for the kids is, there's not much option. It's either you're going to be a horticulturalist, or you're going to collect agua, and you're going to be really poor. So sometimes people can go, the coast is right there, it's 10 miles or less. You can go and practice being a fisherman. Fishermen can make a lot of money. But usually it's like, you gotta go to the city.
So at this point, this village land, who owns that land?
It is part of, in Ecuador, it's a comuna system. So a comuna is the community.
Okay.
And the comuna of El Pital is who owns that, and that's everyone who lives there.
So it sounds like a strange question, but so being poor in a village that, I mean, you own it, but you all own it to go down that. Take me there for a second. Right. You know what I mean? How does that work?
Well, yeah. So the comuna, everyone owns everything together collectively. Some comunas have sold their land to foreigners. Some of it, they can do that. In El Pital,
cattle farmers or what?
Sometimes cattle farmers, but tourists who want to build houses, expats. There are a lot of that. In the surf town Ayampe, it's like that. But in, for example, El Pital, they have such rich resources. They have, they can grow anything. And so maybe they're poor, money-wise, but they're rich in their other resources, like plantain, manioc,
right,
cows.
I guess that's why I'm asking, so when you say there's not many options, is that, not many options in terms of, having a career, quote unquote, or I
Yeah.
mean, and is that now because of like the introduction of the outside world and what it means to have that? Is that sort of what's bringing that idea? Because I mean, in my mind, I'm like, why do you need the money?
I know.
If you've got,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that sounds sort of hippy dippy, but whatever, take it as you will. Like,
Yeah, no, it is like that, and I think definitely that's a part of it.
what, seeing like everything that you see on
Yeah,
the TV,
seeing everything
and
on the
saying,
TV,
you
yeah.
need more.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and just wanting to get out,
Yeah.
which I can understand.
Yeah, right.
Wanting to
You
know
wanted to
more.
get out.
Yeah, and I did. Yeah, but it's like, yeah, wanting to know more or experience more than just your tiny village.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Just as a human concept.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing. It depends, like, coming from such a cool place like that in Ecuador, or also like my farm, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a really homebody as a child. Like, I loved my farm. I didn't want to leave there. I never wanted it to be developed or sold or anything. You know, I was going to cultivate the land. But then as I grew older, then I sort of got this inkling that there's more out there in the world. And I went out and explored and got, like, you know, whoa, my whole blown away. But the thing about it's also a kind of thing about maybe you're like leaving your family, leaving your roots, leaving your ancestors kind of thing, leaving the way of life when in Ecuador when they leave Rio Blanco, when they go to the city. But usually it's not a total abandonment, because they're usually sending money back to Rio Blanco, to their families, to help them, you know, get by. Yeah. I don't know, it's always a hard choice, because it's, what do you do? I mean, is it kind of selfish to be like wanting to go and leave and grow?
No, I don't think it is. I just think it's something that, I mean, I struggle with it too. I think everybody does. I think it's, but I can't help but wonder if it's something that, like, is it a cultural implant?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's, if that's all you knew and you didn't know that there was anything else,
Right.
I mean, would you be just as satisfied, or would you still always be like, I wonder if there's something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's probably why Vikings got on boats and were like, I don't even know if this water's ever going to end, but we're going to go.
Yeah, and the Polynesians.
Yeah, exactly. Kon-Tiki.
Yeah, Kon-Tiki. Yeah. No, well, that's the thing. And like in the old days in Rio Blanco, people would not have left. Like the furthest they would have gone is like, yeah, just to the coast. But it's like, why would you leave? Because you have to take care of so much stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's a little bit different.
Well, everybody's like, if you're in a community like that, I mean, losing one person, you know, out of a 20-person village,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a big loss. I mean, it's
Yeah.
connected, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm hoping what they're trying to do is get the ecotourism really going.
Yeah.
And that can be really helpful, because there are a lot of tourists that come to the coast right there just for, there's an island off the coast called Isla de la Plata.
Okay.
There's supposed to be some plata out there, some silver. And it's called the poor man's Galapagos, because it has all the animals that are on the Galapagos, except for the giant tortoises. But it's very close.
Okay.
So people like go launch off there, but also whale watching is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And then the surfing is popular down a little bit further south. So tourists are always there. Rummaging.
Rummage till you die.
Rummaging. Oh yeah, I was trying to look for this song. Rummaging runs in my family. But yeah, I mean, so what the tourists come up there, and so it's more and more. But one of the biggest hurdles is like they don't speak English. Like hardly anyone speaks English in Rio Blanco. I mean, nobody does, except for the kids. Kind of know some English.
They're probably picking up from TV. I mean,
no, they don't watch any English TV. They are taught in school, but really taught not that well. But I taught English in the school there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it's like chaotic, but
English is a weird language.
yeah, no, it is, and it's like it was also the school is ages 3 to 11.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like
Hearthstone.
I know. Yeah, one room schoolhouse style. Yeah. So.
No, I did that. It's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I learned it and I taught it, and it is difficult.
Yeah.
But I mean, in some ways, it can be really cool because you get like a special plan, special lesson plan, and if kids are really driven, then you can feed them as much as they want. But
yeah, these kids are going to go wild. But that being said, I mean, the kids are. I taught English the first when I was in the field school. So it was like taught English for about like 2 weeks, and that was cool because then all the kids know me. And one of the best ways when you come into a community is to get in the school, or like to teach the kids, because then the kids go home to their houses and they're like,
Victor,
yeah, Victor, and
like,
yeah, and like I may have not have like met everyone in the village, but it's like
they'd
the
be
kids
whispering your name.
Yeah, they're like Victor. So
they're like, this cool Birdman came to my school.
Yeah, exactly.
El pájaro.
Yeah, and they so the second year I got there, it was really amazing because the kids are like, Victor, and they're like,
Yo. With the B.
Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah, and they were just like, come on, and they're like taking me through the forest, like going swimming in the river, like always like, yo, come on, let's play soccer, let's.
Yeah.
So it was really, I mean, they're like really great, super fun, great friends.
Yeah.
And and then everyone knows me through that, so like that's cool.
Yeah, and they're like, and he gets out there and works in the garden.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you gonna? So you are actually about to do some uprooting. You have been doing some uprooting, some cleaning of the house.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to move to Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii, the Big Island.
Tomorrow.
No, we moved it to Saturday.
It's gonna keep getting pushed back. You're like, after New Year.
It can't, because we have to put our car on the barge in Oakland on the 20th.
Okay, so you guys a while ago, so you did exactly what you thought you weren't gonna do, which is a couple years ago you guys sold your family farm. Yeah. Right? Bittersweet, right. I'm sure. And then now you've convinced your madre to, you guys are gonna drive across the country. Yeah. And put your car on a barge. Yeah. And ship your items, your luggage.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to ship everything.
And then you're going to fly.
Yeah. We're put the car in the barge in Oakland, and then rent a car and drive up to Washington State and be in Walla Walla, the wine country where my brother is, for Thanksgiving, and then fly December 1st to the Big Island.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then you'll be, and how long are you going to be there on the Big Island before you go back to your cloud forest?
Right, so I'll be there for about a month and a half, I guess. And then mid-January, I'll head back to Ecuador. Okay. Just to finish up some field work, basically just get back in the village, say,
how do you even finish that? Like, where does it start and where does it end? Well,
I have enough data, field notes, that I could write a thesis for sure. But I just want to be there on the ground because it's much more refreshing, Yeah. And the main reason
you don't want to write your thesis after you've been away for months.
Yeah, no, and I've especially with the pandemic, I didn't go to Ecuador this summer as I would have been. I would have been there for the entire summer. I went for spring break, luckily in March. Yeah. But escaped right before the border closed. Right, like 4 hours before the border closed. Oh my god. Yeah. So it was crazy, and there was running, and we had to get from the coast. And
how did you get out of there?
Well, luckily we had a ticket. We tried to catch a bus, but then all the buses were real gone or crazy or not running because they were like, "Yo, this is a pandemic." So we had to get 4 hours by bus ride to its main city, and we did catch a bus and we got there, and we got out. Luckily, but there were a lot of people who had changed their tickets, bought new tickets to get out that day. Otherwise, they would have been trapped in Ecuador.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Trapped in Ecuador.
Yeah, which is not a bad thing.
No. There's worse places.
Yeah. But the thing is like, that was it's a big gap that I haven't been there.
Are you going to address that in your, will COVID come up in your writings?
I guess so, yeah. That's also why I want to go back, because to see how the village is doing, how they practice social distancing, or if they do, or they wear masks, or what.
Or they're going to be like, what?
Yeah, right. I mean, they do know, and I keep in contact with some people there.
Yeah, what are they feeling?
Well, he said that it's like here where they wear masks, and if they go
But I mean,
out,
there's a lot of communal housing, right?
Well, each family has a house.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there are just 2 roads in, so if it gets really bad,
they can lock it down pretty easily.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But it was really bad in Ecuador, in the coast. There were a lot of people dying.
Yeah.
But luckily in Rio Blanco, everyone was okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So I'll go back down there, do some more research, hang out, I also often, the secret also of making friends is having a little bottle of something called caña, which is like, caña means sugar cane.
Yay, no, who yay.
Yay, know who yay is with the caña. And it's caña Manabita, because I work in Manabí, that's the province. So Manabí makes this liquor called caña. It's like white rum. It's a little sweet. And,
Bacardi? Like a little Bacardi?
Yeah, it's like Bacardi, but it's like, doesn't taste like rum. It just tastes like sweet. It's sort of raisin-like, but it'll get you lit up. But what you do is you just have a little flask bottle of that, and then you just bring that out at the end of the day.
You're going to have to bring separate shot glasses. That's not
I know.
COVID safe, man.
Yeah, this is crazy.
You're going to have to rethink your whole level of interact, like everybody does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to forever be pre-post.
Yeah.
Like, it's a dividing line for
I know.
eternity.
Because usually what we would be doing there is like have a little glass, and then we'd pour like a shot in there, and then you drink from that, and then you just pass that glass around, and everyone refills.
Yeah.
Or they drink from the cap, which is really funny. That's a really tiny shot.
Yeah.
But it's a thing that
Very thimble.
Yeah, just a thimble of brandy wine. It's something that's, we'll see how that goes. But it's always been, my professor was like, yeah, just get a few bottles of cognac and bring them up there with you. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm a party guy. I love the party.
No.
Just take a sip of this wine right here. And so that's great, because they like to party too.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I can relate.
Do you find that when you're traveling? Is there a party?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Usually, yeah. I mean, it goes hand in hand with work. It's like work hard, party hard. Yeah. And I just like to have fun. So I've always, in Cambodia, partying with the locals, sitting up on a wooden platform in the middle of the rice paddy, drinking Angkor beer.
What about when you went to base camp in Nepal? Did you go to the...
Yeah. Nepal, yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah, I went up to Everest Base Camp. I went through like Southeast Asia, just like sort of how I usually travel. Just like, I'm in this country. Well, I might as well keep going.
Peter Cottontail,
yeah.
You mean just hop?
Basically, yeah. And I found myself in Bangkok, and it was so hot, and I was just like, fuck, I gotta get out of here.
Get back to the Himalayas.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm going. So I just bought a ticket to Nepal and just landed in Kathmandu, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but it's cool. Cooler. It was like 70s in the day.
Oh my God. I would have thought it was, I don't know. You know what I mean? That's just like a stereotypical image in your mind.
It's because Kathmandu is down, it's in a valley, but the Himalayas rise right back up behind it.
Did you touch all the prayer wheels?
Yeah.
Go through and have
all over, and in the Himalayas, always hitting the prayer wheels, always sending out the Om to the universe. And it was amazing. Like, I was there, and I'm just wandering around for 3 days. Got a room for $2. It was great. And then, but I'm like dressed as a tropical guy. You know, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm going trekking in my shorts.
Is that when you got me those leggings? Those
Yeah, those
those like what are they? They're not alpaca. They're
I think they're just wool,
all right.
but we could pretend they're yak.
Yeah, yeah.
I got some yak wool blankets from my mom.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean, Kathmandu, what an amazing place, because it's Nepal opened in 1950 to the world.
Yeah.
And since then, you know, that's when Everest, Hillary or Mallory, I think it's Hillary got to the top of Everest in 1953. And that's the same year that Queen Elizabeth was coronated. Coronated? Yeah. And the same year the first Titanic film came out.
Oh.
Anyway.
Pop quiz.
But also it's the year of the snake. But
ooh, that's our year.
Yeah. So but
serpent.
People started coming to Nepal for the mountains, and then it's just like this influx of like mountaineering going on. So Kathmandu is just geared for that. You can buy all your knockoff
REI crap.
Yeah, like North Face everything, and it's all good because it's made there. So, you know, down jackets.
It's made there anyways.
Yeah. But it is actually made there, and
what?
it's fake. It's fake North Face.
Okay.
Like they just got
like South Face.
Oh, and there are some that are like, yeah, really weird. Like that's not the right name, but it's fine. And yeah, I mean, I got a down jacket for like $20.
Nice.
Got a nice sleeping bag. Got like some pants, some nice wool socks, sweaters, everything, hat. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Well, and I was looking at the stand with all these maps, and then I saw the Everest Base Camp. I was like, well, oh gosh, better do it. So, but I looked it up, and I was like, you know, I didn't want to actually do that originally because it's so popular.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of trash there, right? People
Yeah.
just climb the mountains there and are just like, bye-bye oxygen tank down the side of the mountain.
Exactly. And in the climbing season, I was there at the end of November into early December. But the climbing season is in the spring, and it's just like, it's tent city up there, and everyone is, you know, pooping. And,
what?
And it's like, where does that sewage go? It has to get airlifted out.
Oh my god.
And it's just like, you
Are
know,
you serious?
hundreds of people in tents on a glacier at 17,500 feet up there. It's like, what? It's like, it's getting trashed. So I was like, I don't know. I've heard some stories about that. But it was towards the end of the season.
Okay.
And I also wanted to do this original trek, which is the way they used to trek from Kathmandu and then go all the way.
Oh, wow.
But nowadays people fly from Kathmandu to this really small airport called Lukla, and then they hike up from there.
Okay.
And from Lukla to base camp, it's probably about 100 miles. So I took a bus ride and got off at this place called Jiri, Jiri, and got off at Jiri, and then I started trekking, and that's about 150 miles before Lukla. So I trekked and crossed two mountain ranges that are not too high, but they're definitely above 10,000 feet each. And that was incredible because I was the only like Westerner on the trail. And the trails there are the roads, you know, there are no roads. They
That's
were
where
cutting some roads, but
the donkeys are
yeah, I mean, donkeys are
carrying
carrying everything, and people are carrying everything. People are carrying huge bundles of firewood. People are carrying gas tanks. Some people even, I saw a guy carrying a miniature refrigerator. And also a television. I saw a guy carrying a television.
So, theme throughout your travels, people work their asses off
Yeah.
in the rest of the world.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't just see someone carrying a mini fridge just
Yeah.
like down
No.
around.
And also with a band, it's like the band that goes, it's like in South America, over the forehead, and reaches back and connects to their bundle. And it's like, oh man, it must be just
Is that
compressing
like jack
your neck.
up
Yeah.
or what?
Yeah. So it was just an eye-opening, but really interesting because you're going through these different valleys and seeing places that, no one can get to unless they're on foot or on horseback. And these tropical valleys where they're growing terraces of millet, plantains and bananas, potatoes, all kinds of squashes.
That's your next journey. You go back there and do your ethnography.
Oh, I'd love to. That was where I was like, oh man, I would love to learn about this.
That's amazing to hear that like there are still places you can only reach by foot.
Oh yeah, especially in Kathmandu. I mean, in Nepal, it's like the roads are stretching out more, but they're so limited. And I walked on some new cut roads in the beginning, but then it was just all on trails.
And man, ecotourism, it's such a blessing and a curse. Around here too. You heard a friend of ours the other day she was just trying to get from here to Luray, like from the Rappahannock side to Luray, and she was like in a 2-hour traffic jam, for Skyline Drive, leaf peepers, and then like Old Rag has been thousands and thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Just like, and at some point, I saw something in the Rappahannock News that were like, not even prepared for 6-hour hike, wearing flip-flops and carrying bottles of Dasani.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
I see that a lot up there.
Yeah, you do see that. Do you see that when you're in other countries? These eco-tourists, or do they come a little bit more prepared when you're in a different country?
Well, in Ecuador, it's close to the coast, so it's just like they get shuttled up by taxi really quick, and then they're like,
snap picture, get out.
Yeah, and they're like riding horses through the woods or whatever. So it's like they can be kind of maybe basic, but no, in Kathmandu the people are much more. If you're anybody, and the other cool thing about
you could be hiking Everest.
No, and like the Sherpas though, they wear tennis shoes. It's so funny.
They're like, we do this. Well, that's different. Like, I'm not going to judge a local. Like, I'm going to be honest. Yes, I've hiked Old Rag before in like with no hiking shoes. Yeah. Yes, it's true. But I grew up here. I feel like
exactly
it's a different thing.
Yeah, and there, the other thing is like, well, in Nepal, the type of people that go there are the people like Westerners. They're usually something trekking. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be like prepared, and if they're not prepared,
they've been training for weeks.
Yeah, probably. And they can like deck themselves out with all their gear, sort of like I did, and you can do it on the cheap, and then you can go. And so that's really kind of cool because you go to a place. It's like when you go to a party and it's like the party's thrown by all gardeners or something, or all like whatever. It's like, oh yeah, we all have something in common. So like when you're in Nepal walking, it's like, oh yeah, everyone has something in common. We're all here to like trek through the mountains. So, it was great. And the entire way, I just stayed in people's houses. Yeah. Just say hey, and it's like $1 to sleep, and then the meal will be a few dollars. And often they would bring out, like one day I was looking at my map and I saw this place, but it was way on top of the mountain. And I was like, it seems like a cool spot, like that tiny village up there. So I was walking and going, basically straight up a mountain up to over 10,000 feet. I'm like, oh. And then I get there and I'm like, oh, is this a village? And it's like one house. And I see this like teenage guy and I'm like, yo, is this the village? I can't recall the name right now. And he's like, mm-hmm. But it's this one household. And it was interesting because the grandmother of the household had just died 5 days before. And they're Tibetan Buddhists. And so the family had come, the younger part of the family had come from Kathmandu. And then another cousin had come from a monastery further up the path. And they were there, and I just like appeared.
Stumbled upon this.
Because people don't take that route really for trekking anymore. They just fly to Lukla. So I got to see this kind of old, different.
Were they like burned her, and they were like pushing the.
Yeah. So the weather, it was
coals and stuff.
They had burned her a few days before I had gotten there, and they showed me actually a video, and it was up on top of the mountain. And the fire and everything. Wow. But they were sort of still in mourning. And
Yeah.
so it was really interesting. And also in Nepal, people usually eat with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
So you just sort of mix up the food and eat with your hands. And I knew that, so I was like, oh, I'll just eat with my hands. And then it's funny, like, the only people, there were like 10 of us, and the only people who are eating with their hands are me and the grandfather. Like, the rest of the family is like eating with the fork and stuff. I'm like, oh shit. But it was cool. And they were really interested in me, and they brought out this thing called Roxy, and it's like a whiskey they make from like millet.
Wow. Sounds strong.
It was strong. Yeah, it was, but it was really fun to drink it with them, but I got pretty drunk.
Then you had to keep trekking.
Yeah, and the next day, yeah, and I'm up at like really high altitude.
Oh yeah, so you're gonna get drunk really easily. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was great with that family, and I left a crystal ball I had with me. I left that
Do you
with
always
them.
trade? You always try and trade something.
If I paid them for sure, but
it's nice to give to barter, to bring back the bartering.
yeah, and if I if I had a really great time like I did there in the morning, it was amazing because I woke up to the sound of the big drum. They're beating the big drum and then chanting, and they were burning. There's a alpine rhododendron that grows up there, and it only grows like no more than a foot tall above the tree line, and they pick that. It's really resinous, and they put it on the coals in the morning, and it's an incense offering along with juniper. So that's burning, and they're chanting and hitting the drum, and it was just like, oh wow, really amazing. And they took me up there and showed me, and this is the part of their process of guiding the spirit on. Like,
so do you feel like most of the times then it sounds like you're met with a positivity? Because I feel like on some level like you wonder, is it going to be awkward to stumble upon these strangers when they're in this time of mourning, or to go into this village and you know what I mean? Like I guess what I'm asking is, most of the time you feel like when people are interested in you, it's because they know that you're open to receiving, right? And they're like, you have these positive experiences because you're there to be like, show me past the knowledge, I mean, do you feel like it's just because you're a humble person, or what? I mean, you've been met with all positivity is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's probably something about my vibe. I don't know.
My vibe.
Yeah, like when I show up. Like when I showed up there, I showed up with these 2 sticks that I had picked from the forest. Those are my walking sticks. Whereas a regular trekker would have like titanium poles or whatever.
Right. So they're like, who is this?
Yeah, and they're like
olden times.
Yeah, and also he's like alone, because usually Westerners will hire porters, and like they're like, oh, you're alone, interesting. And then I'm like asking questions about like the plants and stuff. So that's like, oh, they're interested in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, wherever I go, I've always encountered like, people love that.
And you feel like they're not like guarded as much as, because you know what I mean? Like you'd wonder if people are going to be like, oh, what do you mean in our business? But I mean, not that you go about it that way. Right.
No, I'm just like, hey, what's up? And respectful always.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't know, smiling. That's always helpful.
A smile gets you a long way.
It does, yeah. Yeah, but it was also interesting in Nepal because going through houses and sometimes coming to certain houses and seeing they have a TV. And they're like, everyone, when there was a TV in a house in Nepal, in a Sherpa house, it's like everyone's just watching the TV, and they're watching something like wrestling. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And it's just like watching the TV. But if you go into another house without the TV, it's so interesting because it's so olden day. Their stoves are just like clay stoves that they put firewood into. The room is usually filled with smoke. The door's open even though it's like 20 degrees outside and dropping. And it's just like, so it's going back 200 years here. Like it's the way things used to be. And I stayed in this one family's house, and it was the mother with 3 kids, and the kids were like 17 to
That's your call, Victor.
I'm busy. Like 17 to 11. There's 3 kids, and after we ate dinner, then the mother scooped out the coals from the stove and put them in this big metal bowl, and then we just sat around the coals and we talked a little bit,
Yeah.
and just hung out. And that was so neat. Whereas if there was a television, then everyone's just watching TV.
Right. You lose the connective.
Yeah. So it's
tissue.
just so cool. And also that house, they had like one electric light. And interesting, if you want to take a shower, it's like, oh, well, we have to boil the water for you, and we'll bring the hot bowl of water in for you.
I did that. Yeah.
Bucket shower. Yeah.
That's how Lonnie and I grew up.
Oh, I know. I know.
Spring house, go and get your water. You got to prepare for this bath like a couple hours in advance. Put the canner on the wood stove.
Isn't that amazing?
No, it is amazing.
I think it's really amazing like that for these days. Like,
yeah. And
whoa.
we had an outhouse. I mean, I will say that when I was in, we took the train out to like it's more like the wine country area where like a lot of the cattle are being grown and stuff, like outside of the city of Buenos Aires.
Oh yeah.
And like they don't have real bathrooms. And I remember the guy that I was with, it was a student who I was attending school down there as well, and he's like, like trying to warn me, like, trying not to just straight out come out and say, like, basically it's just a hole in the ground with two pieces of board. It's not just like, I got this.
You're like, that's no problem.
I was like, it's okay. It could be worse.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like, I also am aware of that.
Yeah, I know you are.
And
that's
so people are like,
about.
oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, it's fine. I can do whatever now. Like, no problem. Other people would probably die,
Yeah.
They can't handle it.
Oh my God, I need my porcelain throne.
Yeah. And at first it can take a little like, getting used to, but
yeah.
And up there it was.
I'm sure going out in
freezing. Oh yeah.
It's bad enough using the outhouse here in Virginia in wintertime, but I can only imagine going out to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night in the Himalayan mountains.
Yeah, and where it's a hole in the ground, but then
Crisp.
Also they'll have these things where it's just like it's like a porcelain like. Where you put your feet and then they like squat, and then there's a hole, but then you have like a bucket of water that you scoop to pour in there, and then it just like goes away. Yeah. But when your bucket is frozen and you're just like crack to get the freezing water out to pour in the hole in the ground.
But how is that even good? I guess there was just a surface layer of ice. I was
yeah,
gonna say, if you're just throwing chunks of ice.
No. But that was really interesting. And when we got further up in altitude, it was very like that.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, whoa. And when I got up there, it was fine. Drink the water that's just gushing out of the ground.
Yeah, I bet that was the purest water you ever drank.
It was amazing. In this one place, this whole river came out of the ground right there at the base of this mountain.
Wow.
And we were up about 16,000 feet, I think. And, whoa.
So it's all like what, ice creating a water table or something? That's
I guess
melting underneath the mountains and then...
Yeah.
Wild.
Coming up, yeah. And it was just really beautiful. I also washed my head in that river.
Cold. It
was so cold, I almost couldn't function. Like I was like, this is fine. Yeah, and I'm like, oh. And then I looked up because I was in the river further down because I'm like, I don't want to be washing right in the tiny village.
Yeah.
And they look up and I'm like, oh, it's so far away. I'm gonna freeze to death. And then the sun was behind this mountain. And it's like I'm in the shadow.
So what's your astral body gonna do now? I mean, you've traveled all these places. How are you gonna walk back to your current body now?
Oh, you mean right now?
Yeah. Well, I guess you've been in Virginia long enough that your astral plane Victor can meet you here, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm here together.
Do you ever feel that though?
Like my astral body?
Like whenever I've been someplace for longer than a couple of days, it takes me maybe 2 weeks or so to I will open my eyes and I'll be in my home in Virginia or wherever my home had been, mainly here. It happened a lot more when I was my base home would be Charlottesville or my parents and others. But yeah, I would open my eyes and I'd be there, and then I'd have to keep blinking, and then I'd be like, all right, yeah, I'm in California, or I'm in Spain or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've heard people talk about that before, where they're like, yeah, your astral body. Well, I mean, it's in all those Castaneda books.
Oh yeah.
The astral body, is not moving as quickly as your physical body when you're in a vehicle, like an automobile or an airplane.
That's interesting, and that makes, like, that's another reason why when you travel, it's really good to stay in a spot for a while.
Yeah.
Because you get the feel, the vibes more,
Yeah.
and then maybe your astral body catches up, and then you're able to be there, really. Because if you're just passing through,
Yeah.
you know, I've passed through places, and it's like, yeah.
A whirlwind.
Yeah, and you don't really... And I've been in places where I'm like, I need to stay longer, and I've just, you know, stayed longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Party.
Victor. Well, I'm very honored that you agreed to come on the Rapahenic Radio.
Oui, the Rapahenic Radio. It's a super pleasure for me. Thank you.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Beaucoup, brah.
Yeah, next time you'll have to talk about being in France.
I know.
You have so many stories.
Yes.
I'm ready for that book and your book of short stories.
Yes.
You're like, don't mention.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, I
How
will.
about just a little teaser? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. Before I entered grad school, the main thing that I was working on, my main project, is writing a memoir, and it's called "Fooling Out and Coming Around," which is a swap up of coming out and fooling around. And yes,
I love it.
Fooling Out and Coming Around in Waikiki. I'm like, oh, the title might be a little long, but
no, I think it's perfect.
yeah, right, yeah, and it's about my life going to school in Hawaii. At 24, I transferred there, and in the first year, you know, I knew I could be anything I wanted, but I still decided to play like the straight guy, and then I finally decided, well, I think it'll be fine. So I slowly started coming out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, started using Tinder. And what a whirlwind of wonderfulness. I met so many amazing people on Tinder.
Yeah.
Who traveled to Hawaii. And I had so much fun, and I met so many cool people from around the world that subsequently, you know, I live with my friend Tavo from Buenos Aires.
Uh-huh.
Met him in Hawaii. We spent 3 days together. And then he's like, come to Argentina anytime. I ended up living with him for 2 months in Buenos Aires. And yeah, French guy. Yeah. So the memoir is about my coming out and meeting all these different guys through Tinder, and how it goes.
Your journey to yourself.
Yeah, basically.
Through Tinder.
That is basically what it is.
My Tinder journey through myself.
My Tinder journey. Yeah. And yeah, it's all about that. So it's pretty much finished, but
excellent. And you're gonna like WordPress it, or what are you gonna do?
I'd like to just get it published.
Awesome.
Yeah. So but right now I'm working on my thesis.
Yes.
So once the thesis is
when
done,
is that? I mean,
May.
is it technically May?
May it should be finished, and then yeah, and then I can finish my memoir. But then the memoir segues into like when I go and do the pilgrimage, the Camino de Santiago, and meet all kinds of cool people, and then that segues into traveling through Southeast Asia.
Excellent.
So there's a lot of book writing coming. Keep your ears pricked.
Do you have a travel blog? You should have a travel blog, Victor.
I know. I used to be posting on Instagram a lot.
I know.
But I haven't been on Instagram in 2.5 years. Which is tremendous because I loved Instagram. But I'm totally free of social media. I just prefer to like be focusing on this life right now. Yeah. This plane. But no, I know, blog. I've thought about that. But I just keep my field notes, and then I just, you know,
do it old school.
Turn it into a book, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So.
Well, I hope to read it and many more.
Yeah, I'll give you a copy when it's republished.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Salud.
Salud. And yeah, shout out to all the Rappahannock amigos. Yeah, it's a very special place here, and
Yeah, we do have a very special place here.
A very, very nice vibe. And, shout out to all my friends and my family. Love you a lot.
And see you all in 2022.
Yeah, right. No, but I think 2021 is going to be a fun year.
A spicy year.
Yeah, 2021.
Let's hope. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, party. Look at this swamp. Oh, is he?